Now we have already talked about relative referencing and absolute referencing. Sometimes in other calculations, you need to mix the two, the relative and the absolute. You need to combine the relative and the absolute in order to perform a perfect calculations. So for example, we have the average of the last 5 years income statements. So what we want to do is that we want to find a percentage of the revenue for each line of item. So in order to do this, so what we are going to do is that we are coming to find a percentage of revenue. So we will find a percentage of the revenue itself. So the revenue divided by the revenue. So now if I try to copy this formula and I bring it down over here, see that it will be picking the revenue, it will be picking the item itself. But I want every item to be divided by the revenue, not the item divided by itself. So in this case, and I can also apply absolute referencing for each of them. So let's say if I apply absolute referencing on each case and I try to copy it down, it will always reference to the revenue. So now I have copied it down, but when I click on it, everything is pointing to the revenue. When I click on this, it's pointing to the revenue. So what you need to do is you need to combine the two, both the relative and the absolute. So what you will do is that you will make the denominator a relative referencing. Then you will make the denominator an absolute referencing. Because what you want to do is that you want to divide each line of item by the revenue. So in that case, I will make the numerator a relative and the denominator an absolute. So in this case, if I copy it down, so when I copy this down, then the computation will be performed. So the denominator will be pointing to the revenue while the numerator points to the item that we want to perform the division. So when I drag this down, it moves in that order. So now let's do another example over here. So with these examples too, we have an assumption table down here. So the assumptions table is in column B. And we want to perform computation. But the computation we want to perform, we want to drag it to the left side and also drag it down without performing calculations, similar calculation for each of them. So what we do is that we perform one calculation and we combine the absolute referencing and the relative referencing. And as we drag the formula to the left, it will copy it exactly as we want it, and as we drag it down to it will copy it exactly as we need it. So in this case, so what we are going to do is that we have the revenue. So the cost of sales is a percentage of the revenue, and that is given in the assumption table. So I will take the formula with my equal to sign and select the revenue and multiply it by the assumption table, the cost of sale percentage in the assumption table. When I try to drag it down for like this, the computation will be wrong because it should be moving down as I go down, but this is not what we want. So what we have to do is that we need to make the revenue. We need to make the revenue, the column, to be relative, whilst the row label become absolute. So in that case, we will put a dollar sign in front of the row label instead of the column label. That is for the revenue. That is for the revenue. So what we do is that we put a dollar sign in front of the row label. Then the column label then with the assumption table, that is B31, we want the column to remain fixed while the row label goes down. So in this case, we will put a dollar sign in front of the column label and we will leave the row label. So in this case, when I drag it down, see that I'm now getting my correct calculation. So now see that the numerator is pointing to the revenue while the denominator is pointing to the operating expenses, and that is what I want. And when I come to the administrative expenses, so you see that the revenue is pointing to the revenue side and the assumption table too is pointing to the operating expenses. That is what I want. And when I come to the administrative expenses too, you see that it will be pointing to the revenue while the other point to the administrative expenses, which is exactly what I want. Now after this, I need to drag it to the left side to see whether the computation will be correct. So I have done this. So now let me select. You see that it select the revenue for February, and that is what I want. And it will also be picking the cost of sale in the assumption table in that order. So when I come to this side of it too, the same thing also happen in that order. So now let's try last one. So over here we are coming to perform a common size income statement. So in accounting, when we talk of common size, it means that dividing each line of item with the revenue for that period. So we have a revenue for October, revenue for November, revenue for December. So what we are going to do is that, so over here we divide each revenue. So I have the revenue of October divided by itself. So now this formula, I'll be dragging it down. I want to copy it to the left, and I also want to copy it down. But when I copy it to the left, you see that it will be giving me a wrong computation. So when I select this, I want to copy it to the left and I also want to copy it to the right. You see that when I copy it to the left, it will be giving me the correct computation. But when I copy it down, it will be giving me a wrong computation. So it will pick the next down item. But I want it, the denominator to always be picking the revenue for that period. So in this case, what I will do is that, let me clean this, then retype my computation. So I'll take this divided by itself. But I want the numerator to be changing as it goes down. But I want the denominator to remain fixed. But as I make the numerator remain fixed, I want it to be moving to the left on the column side. So I will have to make the column label a relative. But as it goes down, it will remain an absolute. So in this case, I will put the dollar sign in front of the column label, in front of the row label, with the numerator. I want it to be moving down. So what I will do is that I will fix the row label, the row label by putting a dollar sign in front of the row label and making all the others relative. So when I copy this to this side, so that it gives me the right answer. When I copy it down here and I drag it down, I'm getting the exact answer that I'm supposed to get. So now you see that it's referencing to the revenue. When I move here, the operating expenses, it's also reference to the row label and to the operating expenses. When I move to this side too, I'm getting the same thing in that order. So I can even copy this to the totals and it will still give me exactly as I want. So you see that the net result is still pointing to the